Okay, welcome back everyone. So today we're going to be talking about walk cycles, specifically a walk across the page. Now, there are two different types of walk cycles. You have the walk across the page, which is where a character physically moves across the page. Then you have a treadmill walk. And the treadmill walk is essentially the character walking in place. A good example of this is Scooby-Doo, when they're walking in one place and the background is moving to show that they're making progress from one location to another. Unlike a treadmill walk, there are some distinct differences, and I will talk about them as we go, but the biggest one is foot placement. So there are the same four keyframes. You have your contact, which is your main two keyframes. You have contact 1 and contact 2, one for each foot. You have passing, which is your main breakdown in between. You have your downs, which come between contact and passing, and your up, which is between passing and contact 2. So it's contact down, pass up, contact down, pass up, contact down, pass up. So be sure to memorize that order that it happens in, because it's really important to stay on top of that. So as far as this project goes, let's go ahead and get started and get things set up so that way it makes a little bit more sense as I talk about it. So go ahead and open an ActionScript 3, as always. We're going to double check in our Properties panel. I'm just going to shift this around here so I have this a little bit organized. We're going to make sure this is 720 by 480, as always. Always double check that before you get started. Okay. Voila. I'm also going to change the stage color. It's pretty hot right now, so I'm sorry if you're picking up on the sound of the fans. But that also means it's kind of dark in my room to minimize the heat getting blown around. So I'm also going to lower the brightness here just to save my eyes, since I am drawing a little bit in the dark. So walks are one of the most hands down essential skills you have to be able to do as an animator. Conversely, they're also the most difficult thing to do properly. There's two different kinds of walks. I'm actually going to pull up a handy little thing I made. I forgot I made this little PowerPoint, so let me get this open and I'll drag it over. There's two different types that can go between both treadmill and walk across the page. And they're your just normal walk, standard walk, which is just contact down, pass up, learning. And that's what we're going to do for this first round. And there's something called an attitude walk, where you change the timing and the placement of the limbs to give the character attitude. So it still has a contact down and pass up, it's just a little bit different. Okay, so drag this over here. Let's see if this will pop up on the proper screen. Haha. Excellent. Whoops. Or not. There it goes. Okay. So here's our contact down, pass and up. And I want you to know one thing right here, that even though we're seeing these characters really far apart, this is not their actual placement. This contact foot right here will be in the exact same place. The heel and toe will remain flat on that same spot as it moves forward. And in a treadmill walk, your character will stay right in the middle and this will slide. But we're just going to worry about how to walk across the page. So I just want to head it with a disclaimer. Even though for the sake of seeing the poses clearly, they're moved apart, in reality, during the animation, the contact foot will always be in the same place as the character moves forward. Okay? So our passing pose, they have this one a little bit higher. Whoops. They have this one a little bit higher. But the way we like to think of it is that it's actually equal with the contacts. The reason it's like this is because it's in betweening the down and the up. But essentially that's also the contact. Back to arcs, you can see the arc being drawn here. So this is one way to interpret it. We will have some guidelines. You can also draw arcs if you think it will help you. Same thing with the hips. Okay. Our contact poses and heads will always be on the same level. Downs will always be on the same level, and ups will be on the same level. And we'll look at some examples that actually forget to do this, and you'll see how wonky it makes the walk look. So we want to set the tempo. The first thing we want to do in a walk is set a beat. Generally, people walk on 12s, which is what we call march time, half a second per step or 2 steps per second. But lazy animators don't like to do it on 12s. It's hard to divide up. You have to use thirds. Think partly in thirds. Like for this one, it's either or. The in-betweens are going to be on thirds, or, oops, now where did we put the downer up? Hey, it's getting hard, especially when we get into the arms and head and acting and drapery. Maybe there's an easier way, right? So this idea of thirds is really difficult to get down. So there is an easier way to have him, her, they walk on 16s or walk on 8s. It's much easier to walk on 16s and easy divide up. Same thing on 8s, which is 3 steps per second. And on 16s, it's each step to 2/3 of a second. So this is how you would divide it up on 16s, and this is how you divide it up on 8s. Now look at this. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Well, if I know I'm animating on 2s, suddenly that makes a whole lot of sense. It's every other frame we have a keyframe. Our contact, down, pass, and up, right? And then if I want to put it on 1s, I would just in between 2, 4, 6, and 8. Mind blown. The animating on 2s is something we're actually going to do. We don't have to do those extra in-betweens unless you really want to, because the timing will be the same and the principles are still the same, and it's just less to manage. When we get into puppet walks, Animate will actually in between these for you. You don't have to do it, which is kind of handy. So here's another thing I wanted to bring up is sometimes when you're learning about animation or you're working at a studio, they may have different words for contact, down, pass, and up. So in this case, it's contact, recoil, passing, high point. Not quite as intuitive. I don't quite like it as much, but this little example's really nice. So in our contact pose, our contacting foot, or our stepping foot, as I like to call it, is heel down, toe up. Our passing foot is heel up, toe down. In our down pose, both legs are bent, of course. This foot is now flat on the ground in the same place, and this is just lifting off the ground. In our passing pose, foot's still in the same place here. The body is moving forward a little bit, and the passing leg makes a figure 4. In the up pose, this toe stays down, this heel comes up, and this figure 4 motion is now forward. And in contact, this foot is now down again, this other leg, heel down, toe up. And here it's even more exaggerated, toe down, heel up. And we repeat that process twice for one foot and then for the other foot. You'll also notice here that they have the back arm and leg shaded a different color so they don't get lost and get confused about what's forward and back, which is pretty important. So I want to talk about secondary and overlapping action in regards to, not secondary action, but overlapping action follow through in terms of a walk. So whenever, even if your character's jumping or doing something like that, anytime a character moves down, the hair and stuff will actually move upwards. They'll be billowing out this way, squashing, because there's air resistance and it's pushing it upwards. For example, the hat here. So as the character moves down, the hat's getting pushed up. Likewise, if your character is moving upward in an up pose, things like hair, dresses, coats, whatever they're holding, are going to get pulled and stretched down. So there's your stretch there. When your character moves down, the hat kind of moves up. When your character moves up, the hat moves down. So just think in opposites when it comes to secondary action, overlapping action, and follow through. So here's some examples. This is a very, very bad walk. It's pretty bad. This is, of course, a treadmill walk. But look at this. We don't have the up and down at all. People don't walk like that. How are his legs bending? And they're barely bending at all if he's not moving up and down, right? Likewise, his arms aren't swinging in opposition always. It's kind of, there's a frame there that's off, and I can't quite pinpoint where. And his scarf should be moving down on the up pose and up on a down pose. So this isn't working at all. So don't do this. Same thing with this. The little hairs here, when he moves up, would fall down. When he moves down, they get blown up. Here's an example of a good walk. Ish. The head looks great. There's up and downs. But look at this arm placement. Look at this leg placement. They don't understand that the legs are overlapping, right? The arms are switching sides, but the legs are not. It's like they have less frames on the legs somehow. It's pretty confusing. The hair's doing what it's supposed to, skirt is not. So again, be wary, especially when you're putting in a lot of details, because it's a lot to manage. Here's another example of a pretty bad walk. We got some ups and downs, but look at that, oof. There is no distinct contact down, pass up, contact down, pass up, which causes his character to look kind of really funky, right? Doesn't quite look right at all. Here's an example of a good walk. So if you remember from Alan Becker's video, that there's the follow through of the arms, shoulder first, then elbow, then wrist, then hand, and you can really see that flowing action there. The feet are good. There's a contact down, pass up, contact down, pass up, contact down, pass up, contact down, pass up. Hair's doing what it's supposed to. This animator also has it coming forward a little bit, where the weight's down here, but it's kind of swinging a little bit like a pendulum. There's a little arc right here that it's swinging against. So this is a very excellent walk with about the same amount of detail as some of the other characters. And you'll notice here too, this is a little extra, and we don't have to put this in quite yet, but every time the character has the opposite arm, because the shoulder's going back, we're going to see a little bit more of this shoulder over here. And when the back foot is forward, we see a little bit more of the back here. Likewise, the head bobs in time. So it's not quite bobbed all the way down on a down. It's probably on the passing where it bobs down because it's following through. And then on the contact, it's kind of coming up from the up pose. Here's another good example. It's a little quick, it's a little jaunty, so the timing could probably be finessed. So what happens here that makes it look so jaunty and fast is the arms and legs are really spread out. So when you animate them on the right time, sometimes they appear like they're moving too fast, and that's just because they're too far apart. But this is an excellent walk. Here's another example. This one is an example of an attitude walk, right? Her arms aren't swinging, her shoulders are still moving in time, right? There's a little sway to her hips. Her head actually bobs in double time, like she's listening to music. Here's another example of an attitude walk, where there's a really big twist in the form with this animation of Betty Boop. This is also a treadmill walk, but you can see that they have the little markers here for the ups and the downs. There's even a little wink in there. That's cute. Here's another example of a really good walk. This is another good attitude walk where this character's just really, really happy. They even have that little sway of the head going back and forth. Very well done. Here's an excellent example. I love this example. This is, I can't remember who drew this. Oh god, his name is escaping me, but he's a professional animator, and you can tell what a difference it makes. His torso is pretty still, but because he has this really wide gait, the animator imagines that his legs are really spread far apart, and because they're spread far apart as he walks, there's a lot of twisting in the hips, whereas there isn't much in the torso. But his head still kind of bobs to the side a little towards us when his front foot steps. Here's another great example of an attitude walk. And this one is a little bit better timed than that really jaunty one. Very simple, rough animation, and this is kind of where we want to start before we start adding a lot of details, right? We want to get the main motions down first before we start worrying about overlapping and follow-through actions. So here's another example of how to do that sort of walk. So the up is really exaggerated, as is the down. And then when you in between them on the contacts, it creates this really interesting little twisting that's happening there, or the passing, I should say. There's a big twist on the passing. So here's just more information on how to do that. I'll also make this PowerPoint available so you can use this for reference if you finish your normal walk early. So it says, and you can bet they're going to be thoughtful in-betweens, not mechanical ones. For example, the last two in-betweens with the right leg are not just in-between, the rest is. Right? Now the whole thing is packed with vitality and change, sophisticated use of the basics. So for instance, the knee is at its highest here on its passing pose, or these look like two in-betweens between the up and the down. So this gives them a little bit more versatility. So they're doing this on the march, which is 12 beats, but they're giving an extra 13 frames because they're animating on 2s, it looks like. So the more frames you get, the different timing you're going to get, and the more in-betweens you have to do fancy stuff like this, like an attitude. So the first step is, of course, to figure out your contacts in an attitude walk. The second step is to develop your two passing poses. This is really critical because your ups and your downs are totally going to depend on the attitude here. So in this case, the contacts have the chest out and the head up. And the passing, it comes down. So you get this really jazzy kind of like West Side Story thing going on. I could totally see him snapping if he really wanted to. So again, this is just more information on how to do something like that. You can read it more in depth on your own time if you feel inclined to do an attitude walk after. After you do your normal walk, you're welcome to give that a try. And here I want to play this. I need to stop the other music real fast. Okay, so let's go to slideshow, current slide. Okay, because this is the introduction from the Animator Survival Kit. One of the characters is a little Jessica Rabbit, so I'm sorry about that, but we all have to be professional and realize that sometimes we're going to be hired to animate characters that are like that and are super cartoony and stuff. We're not free from that. But this is a good example of different walks featuring different body types and different character styles. So just take a minute and as you watch, really look at how things differ, how the passing poses are different, how the contacts are different, how the bending of the ankle is different depending on your character. Okay. So that's Richard Williams' Animator Survival Kit. That's the introduction to the DVDs, but I like to show it because of the walk cycles in it and the very different variations of it and how it can really change a character's attitude. Just as a quick note, because I thought this was really interesting, Richard Williams said in one of his masterclass videos that he had a heck of a time figuring out how to get this jaunty sort of bobbly walk that we saw with the fox. And really the difference is there's two up poses and the contact is a down, as are the passing. So that's the main difference. The foot position, the arm positions are the same, but where the head falls is totally different on the sort of double bounce walk. So if you want to attempt this for an attitude walk, if you have extra time after getting the normal walk done, you're totally welcome to. Here's another really cool example. Very simple, but very effective little animation of Wolverine there. Here's another really cool little walk cycle, and this one's a little bit more in depth, showing frame by frame how Opus here walks for his character. And it says a lot about his character too. Very thoughtful, very quiet, right? Arms behind the back, not very big strides, even though his foot comes up real high. And here's a sneak. I thought this was cool because, like this, we're going to start off by just animating the hips, from the hips down. As you'll see, there's a ton of examples, and I even threw in my own example on the alternative links page. So this is a sneaky walk. Stop steps, slow paced, ease into each step, center of gravity on back foot on contacts instead of on the forward foot. So you can really see how the placement of the hips is very different. Here's another little explanation from Richard Williams on the sneak, talking about the Can-Harris method. So it takes 2 feet, 32 frames, 1 1/3 second for 1 1/3 second for each step on 2s. But of course, it'll be even better adding in betweens on 1s for this particular thing because it's such a slow movement. So in a sneak, the arms don't oppose legs; they just balance. Generally, very little action in the arms and hands. Animate the feet with even spacing. Head tilts slightly up in the passing position. And these aren't X's crossing it out. This is just the middle of the head, from the top of the head down to the back of the neck. And this is the eye line. So here's the timing charts for that. Remember, when things are closer together, they're going to happen much quicker together, or much slower. And there's going to be more frames packed together there with those motions. These are bigger motions, and they're going to move faster. So this is for the body and the head, and this is for the feet. The feet are a lot more even. It's a good example of counteraction. As he moves along, the head goes forward and the hands go back. This is basics. This is the basis. It will work nicely just in between the third position and not adding any fancy bits to the interaction. So a traditional sneak has very interesting construction. The main things are the body goes back and forth. The body goes back when the foot goes up. The arms are used for balance. When the foot reaches and contacts the ground, the body is still back and the head is held back, delayed a little bit. After the foot contacts the ground, the body follows, going forward as the next foot takes the weight. Next, the body will go back as an A, and the other foot goes forward. So this is what's kind of happening. Contact forward, back into a contact. As with a walk, there are 3 important drawings. There's 2 contacts and a very interesting passing position. Oops, this is a little bit blurry, but if you go into the PowerPoint file, you can minimize this and read it a little better. This is just the sneak with the duck, which is kind of helpful, and it gives more timing charts. And it shows the different body shapes, which is kind of cool. Okay, so that's that for the little lecture. So let's go ahead and jump into the project. So the first thing I am going to do is I'm going to make some guidelines for myself. So I'm going to rename this layer Guides. I'm going to come over here to my swatches, color, and I'm going to have blue here first. I'm going to use my line tool, and whoops, wrong color. Okay, so what I want to do is I kind of want to I'm going to hold shift, and I'm just going to draw how far my contact poses are going to be. I can actually select this now, hold Alt and Shift, make a second copy. Alt and Shift, kind of figure out where these footfalls are going to be. And it's all part of the learning process. How far apart you really like them to be, that's just something you figure out with time based on your character. Alt. I'm going to drag it even off screen a little bit here. Okay, I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to hold Alt again, and I'm going to bring them down just a little bit. Oops. Alt, please. There, and I'm going to use the arrow key to nudge them forward with them still selected. And I'm going to change their color to red. Red for front, blue for back. So this is where my feet are going to land, depending on their contact poses. Then, let's see, I can't remember what order I had it in. I think it was green, orange, and purple in that order. So I'm going to make a green line here for the top of the hips. I'm going to make an orange line. The middle. I may have this different in the instructions, just move them around. It's the same principle. And a purple. And this is where the top of my hips are going to be. Because like I said to start, we're only going to be animating the hips down. We're not going to be worried too much about... This needs to be a little bit closer. There we go. We're not going to be animating the top of the body quite yet because there's a lot of complex mechanics just in the legs. So I'm going to lock this layer now. And on top, I'm going to write notes. I'm also going to click over here on the series of lines and I'm going to say large, just so this is very clear. And I'm going to come over to properties. With this keyframe selected, I'm going to name this C1 for contact 1. F6. D1 for down 1. F6. Passing 1, P1. F6. Keyframe. And this is going to be contact 2. Oops. I meant to hit 2. Oops, I missed one. Up. Up 1. Contact 2. F6. D2. F6. P2, passing 2. F6, Q2, not the band, but up 2. And then we're going to be back to contact 1. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to copy frames, right click, paste frames, right click, paste frames, right click, paste frames, right click, paste frames. And I'm going to do this for a little while. Let me extend this out. I think that'll be decent for right now. And if I end up needing more footsteps, what I'll do is I'll just extend these again. So I'm going to lock the notes. This is just to help me keep track of where my contact poses will be. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my contacts first. So this is rough anim hips down. So first things first is I'm going to draw with my brush tool. I'm going to go to color here. I'm going to use a gray, a darker gray, just to make this easy. Woo! Make sure I'm on the right thing again. Make this smaller. So my pressure sensitivity issue has not been fixed yet, so I'm sorry about that. So just bear with me. And that's a little hard to see against the other stuff. There we go. I'll make it white. That makes it super easy to see. Now, we don't have to make super complex characters. That doesn't really matter. What matters is that we're able to get this motion down and get it understood. So even if you're just using like kind of simple shapes, that's all that matters. So first things first is I'm going to have them start off with the contact on the right leg. So I just feel like I want to do that. So I'm going to come over here to red. Oops, click off, come back here. I'm going to draw my first contact pose. I'm going to keep this real simple. Just kind of like a little stick leg there in red. Then I'm going to come in blue. I'm going to draw the back leg, and it's going to fall on this blue line. Heel, toe down, heel up, and on the front leg, heel up, toe down, and it's going to land somewhere on this line. Next, I'm going to do my next passing pose, F6. So I don't forget what colors was stepping first. I'm going to turn on onion skin. So I'm going to come back to the white. And in between these next two lines, I'm going to draw a next circle for the hips. I'm going to start with my red foot again. Now the red foot is still going to be back here. The toe's going to be down, right where this toe was before. And the heel's going to be up. So these should be on the same little line right there. We're going to come forward to the blue, and now the blue is going to be our contact pose, where the heel is touching this blue line and the toe is up. I can also kind of color it in like this just to help show that it's behind. I'll do that over here too. Okay, back to contact 1, F6. Now, technically I could copy this frame right here and paste it here, but I really want to practice getting the hang of this because it's really important to know how to do it without copying stuff. Because you may go work for a place that's like, hey, do this on paper, or do this on this program that doesn't allow you to copy keyframes. Do it in Photoshop, right? So it's really important that you guys have the ability to do this without relying on copying and pasting frames. So do not do that. So again, it's going to touch this middle line, the hips, right here, and it's going to fall in between the next 2 foot guides. I'm going to do blue first because blue was my contact foot this time. I'm going to come down. Toe's going to be right above where it was before. And I'm going to come to my red. My red's going to come down. Just like that. Heel down, toe up. Next contact, F6. Delete. Go to white for my hips. Put it more or less right in between. I'm going to go back to red. This red was my stepping foot this time. That toe's going to be, if you follow the arc right there, it's going to be right here. And heel's going to be up. Back to the back foot, which is now going to be down right here. Heel down, toe up. Next contact, F6, delete. Go back to my white. Nice little circle. Blue was my stepping foot, so I'm gonna come down. Toe's gonna be right there. Back to the red. My guides are a little bit spread out, but that's okay. Make it work. Okay, and last contact. I think I'm going to do one more contact just so my character is fully off the screen. Start on the red. Toe was right here. Heel up. Go back to the blue. Okay, I'm going to do one more. Where it's over here. I'm just going to pretend there's another couple right here. I'll just draw them in quick. Just so I know that position, so I can animate the in-betweens that will get my character over here. Okay, perfect. So I'm actually going to delete these. Right-click, remove frames. So now if I were to put on looping, it's walking, kind of, sort of, right? I mean, it's moving, its legs are moving, but not that great. So we're going to stop. We're going to come back, and now the next thing we're going to do is passes. We're not going to pardon, we're not going to do ups or downs yet. We really want to work from this idea of keyframes to breakdowns to in-betweens. There's no real extremes in this one quite yet, because it's just a basic walk. So I'm going to hit F6, delete. I'm going to turn on onion skin, and I'm going to make sure it covers both of these. Okay, so passing pose is going to be basically the same height. And this little hip orb, however you draw the hips, is going to be immediately in between both of these. I'm going to start with my red foot because it's down. Yeah, my red foot is down, so I can draw a line where the foot starts and where the foot ends. It's going to be kind of something like that. And then I can go to my blue foot, and I know my blue foot is going to be making a figure 4, so I'm going to draw through for you guys. Something like that. And if you're having trouble managing how the shape of your leg, what you can do is, instead of drawing lines, draw two ovals like this, because you can draw the oval the same size however you need to, right? That makes it a lot easier to maintain this sort of shape. So if you're having trouble with legs, do that. I'm also only shading what we actually see, not what's behind the front leg. So if you see shading like that, that's why. Okay, let's go to our next passing pose, F6, delete. Put this hips right in between. I'm going to start with the back leg this time, because that was my stepping leg. I'm going to line up the heel, line up the toe. I'm going to hold off on coloring for just a second, because I'm going to go to my red leg, and I'm going to make this one the figure 4. You can see how rough I'm being, right? And that's good. You want to start rough. You don't want to worry about details quite yet. Even if you're going to add stuff like shoes and whatnot, you want to get this animation, the rough like this, done first, and then you want to do a second pass on its own layer on top to figure out those details and animate those details. You don't want to do it all in one layer. Okay, so again, hips right in between. So my red foot is the stepping foot this time. So line up the heel, whoops. Line up the heel, line up to where the toe's going to be, connect back to the body. All right, go to blue. So now my blue leg is my passing leg, and I'm going to give it a figure 4 again. Draw through. Okay. 6. So one of the biggest challenges of doing a walk is, especially on these passing poses, is really, really staying aware of what foot is your stepping foot and what foot is your passing foot. Because this is where you're going to make the mistake of mixing up your feet. I guarantee it. Okay, so blue foot is our stepping foot. Line up the toe, line up the heel, connect back to the body. Go to red, put red in a figure 4. Passing F6, delete. Again, it's lining up with this middle contact line. Okay, and this time red is my passing foot, so I'm going to line up the heel, line up the toe, and blue is my passing foot. I'm sorry, if I said passing foot before, I meant stepping foot. Put it in a figure 4 position. Same thing over here, even on this last one, even though it's kind of off screen, we're probably going to see a little bit of the feet still, a little bit of the hips, so I'm going to go ahead and draw it anyways, especially because it's easy. Line up toe, line up the heel, connect back down. Voila! Our passing poses are done. Now, before I go on to the next stage, what I want to do is I kind of want to watch this and I want to see if it looks okay. Looks to be. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, it's back to start, using my arrow keys to make sure things are working. So yes, red foot is front, red foot down, red foot back, blue foot front, blue foot down, red foot, blue foot back. Perfect. So you really want to, at every stage, you really want to double check your animation, not just playing it in the timeline, but going through it frame by frame and really looking at the legs to make sure you have the right ones moving. Okay, so next thing, you get to choose between ups or downs. I like to do downs first, personally, just because they happen first in the timeline. So I'm going to hit F6, delete. I'm going to change this so I only see the previous contact and the next passing. I don't see the next contact pose. So I'm going to come up. So that with the down, I'm going to move, keep my hips the same size. Again, that solid drawing. But now it's going to be touching this bottom line. It's not going to be touching the top, the middle line. And I'm going to start with my stepping foot again, which is our front foot, the red foot. So now the foot is all the way down, and I kind of know where that is from the second passing. But now, because the character is on a down pose, there's nowhere else for the leg matter to go but to bend. So I'm going to bend this leg matter. And this back leg is going to kind of pop up. It's not going to be in passing pose yet, but it's basically shaped like passing pose. It's just further behind. Right? See how that works? Okay, next down. F6, delete. And change this so it's just the previous contact. Again, double check. Be very conscious of what you're doing. Make sure the hips are touching that bottom line. This time I'm going to start with the blue because the blue is my stepping foot. Measure out heel to toe. Again, leg has nowhere to go, so it has to bend because everything's closer to the ground. Right? Then my red foot. I'm going to be popping up. Something like that. Right. You can double check and just scrub and see how it's working. Come down to the next one. F6, delete. Back to my white for my hips. Make sure it's on that bottom line. And it's right in between the other two hips. This time red is my stepping foot again. So I'm going to come down. I'm going to draw. This leg is going to... I think this has to come down a bit further. There we go. And draw it bending. And my blue foot is going to be my passing foot. Double check to see if it's working, and it is. Perfect. Come down to the next down, F6, delete. Draw the hips, touching that down marker. And if you really need to, you can always, on the guide layer, write this, like on the side, just to help you remember what it is, if you need it. Same thing like here, like front. So if you guys need to do that, go ahead and do that on your guide layer. Okay, so measure this out. Here we go, it's nice and bent. And again, I know I'm going to be out of town when you guys start this, But if you have any questions on like what you should be doing first, what you should be doing second, really take the time, rewatch this video. I know it's going to be a little long because I did a lecture and a walkthrough all in one, but really make sure to utilize this as a tool. Okay, again, drawing it, touching that bottom down. This time the red was my stepping foot, so I'm going to animate this one first. I think this hips need to come down a little bit more. There we go. Let's go to the blue. So this is happening behind. Okay, next down. Last one, delete. Trying again on the bottom. Blue is my stepping foot this time. Measure at the foot. And red is my passing foot. So the reasons we have downs and ups to begin with is because walking is actually the process of constantly falling and catching yourself. So this seems really fast. Don't worry, we're going to put it on 2s in a bit. But for right now, I'm just double checking that this is working. I'm going to come back to the beginning and I'm going to arrow key through it. Make sure everything's functioning as it should. Looks good. All right, time to move on to the ups, the last ones. Turn on onion skin. So this time, the hips are still going to be right in between. They're going to be the same size, but it's going to be touching this top line. And so what happens in the up pose is that your character's legs are really stretching here. So that toe's going to be down, heel's going to start to come up. Not all the way, but it's getting there, because the character has to kind of stretch to get it. Blue foot is passing foot, so this is just passed. So it's kind of the same shape, except now it's getting ready to kind of come down towards the ground here. So turn this off for a sec. See how that works? Okay, same thing here. Delete F6. Oops. F6 first, then delete. Okay, so right in between, get that up, good up hips in. So this time I'm going to start with my blue because the blue was the stepping foot. Measure the toe. It's going to lift, but it's not going to be quite as lifted as the following frame. But it is going to be stretched to accommodate for that lift. And my red foot has passed. Is now getting ready to come down. It's kind of the same shape. It's just kind of heading forwards. Same thing here. Next up, draw the hips, touching that top line. Right in between. Red is my stepping foot this time, my front foot. So measure. Get the toe there. It's going to be in the same place. Heel is starting to lift. And blue is my passing foot. I'm gonna make this a little wide. Come back in here and fix it. There we go. Good enough. F6, delete. Again in between, and it's going to be touching that top line. This time blue is my stepping foot. You'll notice too that even though I'm drawing the legs and I'm not really talking about it, but the legs are actually falling immediately in between these two. So even the legs have in-betweens, and there's a purpose to where they're getting placed. All right, let's go to red. Red is my passing foot. Remember, red is going to overlap the blue because it's in front of it. Okay, almost there. Do the red first. Red is my stepping foot. And stretching all the way down. And blue from behind is coming forward. Getting ready to step. Last one. That was my stepping. There we go. So now if I hit loop, we get a full walk. Pretty speedy little thing, right? Before I put it on twos though, I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to use my arrow keys to kind of go through it and make sure everything's working. And see, make sure the feet are also sticking too. Whoops, it's got to save. Sometimes you can look in reverse and you'll find things that you didn't notice before. Like here, the heel comes down a little far. So what I might do is I might hit E for eraser, B, go back to blue, and just kind of double check. This heel needs to start a little further back too, that this is working. Same thing here, this heel needs to come a little further back. There we go. Little things like that. So like here, that front foot's sliding a little bit. So what I'm going to do, turn onion skin. So what I might do here is on this down, I might bring this in a little bit. Just to help keep it from sliding. And extend that toe. And now it won't be doing that. So you can go through and make little changes like that. Voila! Look at that. Look how great. Excellent. So once you have that done, we're not done yet. We're not ready to put it on twos. What I want you to do, and I'll double check this in the instructions. We're going to right click and we're going to hit duplicate. Lock this. Let's go ahead and unlock notes 2. And we're just going to drag this so it starts immediately after this hip frame. I'm going to select all of this, right click, copy, right click, paste. Just so our notes can continue. Come down to my guides, extend this, F5. Okay. The reason I want to do this is because I'd like to see just the hips and legs working. And I'd like to see hips, legs, and arms working. So, lock these again. I'm going to make a new layer. Rough, anum, torso. So now, I'm going to do the same process, except I'm adding in a torso. So now here, my guides, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to duplicate this as well. And this here. And just here on guides copy, all I'm going to do, I'm just going to lift this up. I'm going to hold shift and drag it up for the head. There we go. Lock that. There we go, just so I have a guide to work with. Okay, so now I'm gonna kind of do the same thing. Before I add the arms, I'm actually just gonna worry about the head and the torso. Okay. So here's a nice head. I'm gonna use a little box for the torso. A box for the neck. A triangle box for the torso. Whoops. That went on the wrong layer. Lock. I thought I locked you. Lock that. Unlock this. There we go. So get a little head in here. Neck. Torso. Okay. Onion skin. Also drew that too short. My bad. There we go. Make sure it touches that middle one. I'm gonna go back. This looks kind of funny with make a bigger head. There we go. That's a little bit more proportional with those stubby legs. So I'm just going to do this on all my contacts. That's a little hard to see on mine, that blue. I can see it here on my Cintiq. I don't know how clear it's going to be on the video. Shoot, did I do that already? I did. There we go. Make sure it's touching that middle line. It's my bad. Try and keep these shoulders as level as possible too. Okay. Last one. Just kind of scrub through, make sure this is working. Okay, it's maintaining about the same volume, except for right here. Okay. I wanted to show you guys this first just because usually, depending on how you're doing your walk, your character can be looking towards us here and a little bit more away here. Whether you do that or whether you just have them kind of facing profile view is totally up to you. You can totally just have their nose being like this the entire time. You're not obligated to have their head twist. You can see what a difference that makes, right? So this is why you kind of want to animate the head and stuff first, or at least get those main keyframes there. Same thing for the passing. Turn on onion skin. Because we have just come down from a down, remember the head's going to be up, it's going to be following through. here. So it's going to be a little upwards here because it's following through from the down. Here it would actually be a little bit lower. That's okay. That's all. Okay. So depending on what you're doing with the head, you may want to animate the head and torso first. If your character's just looking straight ahead, you can probably go ahead and animate it all at once. But do start with the torso and head first, at least on the contacts, just so you can focus on making them the right size for the sake of in between. Okay, so as far as arms go, whoops, not what I wanted to do, click off. Arms will always swing in opposition to the leg. So if the red leg is forward, this hand's going to be back. And this arm is going to be forward. Same thing here. If the blue leg is forward, this blue arm is going to be back. And the red arm, oops, go back to blue. I'm going to shade what we can see of these blues here. Is going to be forward. And it's going to be a little bit more forward on the shoulder than it was in the previous pose. Same thing here. Red foot forward, red arm back. Blue arm forward. Whoops, gotta save for auto recovery. And this one. Okay, so just gonna color that in here because I forgot it in the other one. Blue arm's gonna be further back. Red arm is going to be coming forward and closer towards the front of the torso. It's going to be about on the same line too. So really eyeball where it was before. Okay. And red arm forward. You can even have them closer to the body like this. It doesn't have to be swinging out so far. If you wanted to. I'm showing a little bit more of a swing just so you can clearly see it a little bit better. Again, double check. Looking good. Okay, so now for the passing poses. Okay, so the arms are basically going to kind of be right in the middle. So here's that top shoulder. This arm is swinging backwards. So that hand's going to come forward here because it's getting blown this direction. And this arm's going to be here in the front. Kind of getting blown this way because again it's moving this direction. Backhand's moving that way, so hands are going to face the opposite direction. They're getting pulled. Same thing here, F6. Oops. Delete. Okay. Draw the head right in between. Neck, torso. So it's going to be kind of the same thing, except the arms. Because this arm's now swinging back, because in the next pose it's going this way. Hands are going to be a little bit more like this. Draw the body. Arms moving backwards. So that hand's going to flip forward again. This arm's coming forward, so it's going to do this. Arms coming forward. It's going that way now. But arms heading back. Hands going that way. Almost there. Red arms coming forward, so hands going to be that way. Blue arms going back. So even though we're not seeing it, we want to animate it so we know where to put the in-betweens. So this is why I've been stressing how important drawing through is for all these months. And it comes down to this. Blue arm is swinging forward. Red arm is swinging back. Okay, so let's check it again. See how that's working. It seems to be working pretty good. Now onto the downs. And here's an interesting fact. If you want to make your walk look extra realistic, the arms are actually going to be at their widest point here. It's not actually the contact because of follow through. Because they just got swung out and now they have to fight gravity before they can swing back down, kind of like an arc. So remember, on the down, draw the head on that bottom line, not on that middle line. Everything is going to be physically lowered. And here, we're just going to extend his hand a little bit. Here we're going to extend it a little bit. You're going to flop up because the body's moving down. Same thing here. Draw the head on the bottom line. It's like stop on your right foot, don't forget it. Draw on the bottom line, don't forget it. Okay. And see what a difference that makes already. Even, like, you probably want some extra in-betweens just for the arms, but you can see what a difference it makes. They're super flappy for the sake of this tutorial, but see what I'm doing. Okay, draw the head. Last one. There we go. Double check. Okay. Okay, so same thing here, kind of same principle, except now we're just doing a normal in-between. I'm just going to move this one over on either side so I don't have extra information. I have to combat viewing. So the arm, in this case, the red arm's moving forward. It's just going to be a perfect in-between. So I'm going to draw a little arc real quick. Of what's in between here. So it's just going to fall immediately in between. Same thing with the blue. So we can see the shoulder right here. Okay. So this time we're drawing to that top line. Blue arm is the one swinging forward this time. Gotta keep it nice and loose and gestural. And remember, the blue is behind. The red is in front. And it's actually going to be pretty close to in the middle here of the arm. Or the shoulder, I should say. Gotta autosave. One thing you can do too is just lay out all these arcs ahead of time. And you won't have to draw them every time like I am. Oops, I wasn't done on that one. Just kidding. I'll go back to it too. Okay, and I'm not going to worry about the arms because I don't think either of them are going to be seen there. You can see what a difference this makes. So there is a little bit of issue there I have to fix with the arms being too long, but you get the gist of how they're being shaped. So now what we're going to do, bring this down, select all the way down, F5, on each of where these keyframes are, and you know where they are because you have your notes. The notes will tell you exactly where those keyframes are. Select all the way down, F5, 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 all the way down, F5. We're going to do this all the way down the animation. Oh, except for here. Okay, so here we're only going to go down to guides copy. It's fine because it's off screen. I'm accidentally creating copies over here of previous animation, but that's okay. It's off screen, I'm not worried about it. Afterwards, I can always come back. Just double click, remove frames, there we go. Okay, so now if we view it, I'm gonna hit this, we'll see what screen it comes up on in. You can see how nicely it's timed now, right? Just a very basic walk. You can see what a difference it makes. And if you want to, what you can do is you can in between these. So you would start with the hip one just to get practice, right? Or I guess, because we've already done the hips and you'd have to do it again, you can just come over here and, whoops, remove frames. That one's a little too long. There we go. You can come in here and you can do one in between, right? And you can just in between these two using the same colors. So we're gonna unlock both of these. Select both, delete. Onion skin is on, drag it over to both sides, right? And then this is where things are going to be a little bit different. They're not going to fall exactly on a line, so you're just going to kind of ignore the guides and just kind of place everything as in between everything else as you can. Start with the body, because that's the easiest one. Then go to the legs, right? This will be halfway, the foot here. It'll start to bend. We're literally just putting lines exactly in between the other lines of that form. Go to blue, draw through the top of the legs right here, bottom of the leg is right here. It probably lifts off right there with the toe still kind of touching, right? There isn't much difference right here with the arms. Oops. But we can draw the hand here anyways. Color in what we actually see on the back. Back up here to the top of the arm. This one's a little bit tricky. It's going to be a little bit straighter here. And everything's ending up on this bottom layer, and that's okay. But you can see how that kind of smooths out the motion. And you can do that for all of these. I'll do another one just to show you guys again. We're going to turn on onion skin. Okay, we're going to start with the body. Draw this head exactly in between. Think of this as in sections. We're not thinking of the whole picture right now. We're thinking of each of these individual parts getting moved halfway in between where they were before. Come down to the stepping leg. It's starting to straighten out again. And at this point, the foot's already on the ground, so that makes it easy. Here, this leg is going to fall in between these two in terms of shape, so this is why it's important to draw through. Right? This hand's basically doing this. We're only going to see a little, maybe a little bit more of that come out a little further. There's a big jump here. That's okay. Right? So now we have something much smoother. And you can go ahead and do that if you have time. Before you do an attitude walk, go ahead and practice in betweening. So that's going to be really important as we go forward, that you guys are able to kind of break down shapes and do that. And I'll try and have this in between and the document as well as the MOV available on the drive for you to watch. Okay, so I hope that was informative. I know I've talked to your guys' ears off for like an hour and a half now, but hopefully this helps, and hopefully you have a good time doing the project. Again, read the instructions very closely. If you're confused with the instructions, really kind of skim through the walkthrough and try and find where all that stuff was when I talked about it. All right, good luck, and I can't wait to see what you create.